clarify what the problem is that the client is having with their current system. If there isn't a problem there to solve in the first place, it kind of suggests, well, why is there a need for you to actually then go and make an application if there isn't a problem there? So that's certainly a good question to start off with. I'm not going to give an answer to it though, because I kind of feel I touched on that in a fairly sort of light-hearted way in yesterday's tutorial. So I think that one you've got. So the next question is then, what features do you think the game needs? Number 2, and is there any specific functionality that you want the game to have? I think I just need to zoom out on that. Yeah. So that's a good open question to begin with, and what I quite like about this question as well, that they've also included some suggestions to sort of prompt your client in terms of potential things that they might want to consider including. That's certainly going to be a useful thing to do when you've got a client who maybe isn't quite sure about what they want their application to do. It's for you guys to actually brainstorm some ideas in advance of the interview and then suggest them to them. So yeah, for this particular question, what features do you want the game to have? I think I will clarify this question as we sort of go through the other questions. What I will say is, and I've got another interruption, Ben. This time I'm going to have to deny you as well, I'm afraid. What I will say is that in terms of the requirements for tic-tac-toe and this particular project, there's going to be some requirements that I'm going to expect all of you to kind of include in your finished product, and then we're going to have some extension requirements. And so the next, well, over the coming questions, we're going to focus on these sort of essential features and the things that must be there. And then the last set of questions are the kinds of ideas that you were suggesting, you know, that are a little bit more involved and will require a little bit more work. And it'll be your choice as to which ones you do or don't include. So yeah, let's have a look at the next question. So number 6, what are the exact rules for playing the game? Maybe you could complete an example game walkthrough. Now that's a really good question to ask, because obviously as a developer, if in this case, if you're making a game, then you need to understand the exact rules for how that game works and what happens in all the different situations and the different permutations. So for that question, what I'm not going to do is get you to write down and explain the rules of tic-tac-toe. I'm hoping that you are familiar with the rules of tic-tac-toe. If you're not, just log online and play a couple of games. I'm sure you'll find websites out there as well that will list the specific rules, but it is just traditional tic-tac-toe, so 3 noughts or crosses in a row, going diagonally across or vertically in the grid of 3x3, then you win the game basically. So it's a traditional game of noughts and crosses that I am after, please. But if you want to kind of look for specific rules there, then do head online, and yeah, I'm sure what you'll find will be adequate for this particular assignment. In your year 2 projects, I mean, the reason why that's such a good question is that, you know, it's very likely that the system that you're developing, or the problem for which you're developing a system for, you might not have really good familiarity with that system yet. So getting the client to actually explain through step by step, you know, how the system actually works is a really good question, and would actually get quite a lengthy, detailed and qualitative answer. So yeah, that's a great question to include in general projects. Okay, so the next question, number 7. So we're getting more specifically now about the functionality. So would you like a random generator to determine whether you are a nought or a cross, or would you like to be able to choose? Well, from my point of view here, I would like the option for both of those to happen. So yeah, obviously sometimes it can be agreed upon with the person that you're playing as to who goes first, in which case that should be permissible. Sometimes, and if you were playing against a computer, for example, then yes, you'd need some form of random generator to decide who goes first. So that is something that I can be fairly clear on, I think, in terms of having both of those options available for playing a game. Okay. Number 8, what do you want a maximum on the scores? Is there anything you would like the scoring system to be able to do? So for example, we've got changeable number of rounds to win, etc. So that actually was something I hadn't really thought of, and I think that was a really good suggestion. And so I do want that to be part of the basic game. So I think it would be quite nice if before a game of tic-tac-toe, if you prompted the user to be able to say, well, I want to play 5 rounds of tic-tac-toe, a best of 5 game, for example, and then you get an overall winner based on the conclusion of the 5 games, if indeed you need to play all 5 games for a victory to occur. Okay, so that sounds to me like a good idea, and I think that's something that you could include. Okay, so I would like that to be there. Number 9, would you like to use what would you like to use to play the game? A keyboard, mouse? How do you want to access the product? Online, exe file, or mobile? So for that particular question, I mean, I'm quite happy to have a standard Windows Forms application created within Visual Studio. So you're probably looking at more kind of an exe sort of desktop-based game. If you've got a year 2 project where you're thinking that you might be wanting to do something that's accessible online, or maybe something that's mobile orientated, then by all means use this mini project as a chance to maybe explore different options through which you could develop the applications. But for this project, I'm quite happy for you to use Windows Forms applications and aim it at sort of desktop devices. And that's certainly a good valid question to ask as well in terms of your client. You know, what is the actual program going to need to run on? What platform is it going to need to run on ultimately? Okay. So how many levels should I add into the game? So this is kind of talking about difficulty, isn't it? So number 10, difficulty. So in the basic version of the game, then there should be the opportunity to be able to play against a computer-based opponent, and that computer-based component just needs to be able to make valid moves. Okay, so they just need to be able to put zeros or X's onto the board. There doesn't need to be any thought about it. In the extension section, and you might want to just make a sort of separate note further down your sheet of paper here for extension opportunities, having some kind of AI to the gameplay. So for example, if I've got 2 circles in, next to one another, you would expect the computer to be able to block that move and stop me from winning the game on the next go. That kind of thing would be a fantastic little extension to throw in. Okay, so increasing the difficulty of the game. How many levels? I think we're going to be overcomplicating it if we said any more than 2. So the basic version and maybe then an intelligent version. If you want to kind of make it, if there's any further levels in between that you can think of, you're more than welcome to try and throw it in. Should there be a timer? I quite like this one. So this brings a bit of tension to the actual gameplay, doesn't it? So you can't have someone sitting and taking a long time to decide on their move, particularly in the human versus human game. So that one, I'm going to say that actually can be an extension requirement as well. I don't need that to be in the basic version of the game, but if you want to include a timer, and I guess your follow-up question to that might be, well, how many seconds? Then I'd probably say, for tic-tac-toe, maybe about 10 seconds ago would be good. Okay, as we're 11 questions in, I'm just going to have a quick look at the chat feature and just see if there's any questions come in. So just excuse me while I do that. Okay, it's okay, Aaron. Yep, thank you. I've just got the apology from Aaron, so that's absolutely fine. Ben, I'm waiting for yours. Would you like to play against other people or practice against the PC? Do you need a single player option? So I think you might have been able to guess what my answer to this is on some of the answers I've already given. I would like to be able to play against other humans, or if there's no other human to play against, I would like to be able to play against a computer-based opponent as well. So yes, there would be a single player option. So yeah, I'm expecting that in the basic version of the game to be able to do both of those. Okay. Number 13. If you want to play other humans, would you record the number of wins for each person only against other humans or against the computer as well? And would the computer win have the same value as a human win? So again, I would make a note of this one for the extension section, because it's going to be a little bit more involved, this particular one. If we're talking about registering scores for the game. Well, I've lost the question now. Where did it? Yes, it's here, isn't it? So it's this question here. So my answer to this question is yes, the computer win is equal to that of a human win. And the scoring system could become quite complex. So I think at its basic level, you need to be obviously recording the score of each individual game. However, it might also be that you want to record the score of the overall game, if that kind of makes sense. So if we've got this setup where you're playing a best of 5, then you might win 3 of those 5 games. Therefore, you've won the overall best of 5 game, and therefore you also get a point for that as well. So I'm quite flexible really about how you go about delivering that. If you want to just do it per game, I think that's probably the easy one to start off with, and then maybe evolve it. You're also going to need to be able to store that data permanently, though, aren't you? In terms of if you're going to use it again in future executions of the program. So that one I've got a little bit of flexibility over. You can decide how you want to interpret that. Number 14, would you always be one of the players, or would you like other players to play without participation? I think I've already answered that question. The login system's an interesting one, isn't it? So yes, I'm not going to ask for like a formal login system where you have to enter a username and a password to access the game, but certainly somehow where you can a way of entering a name. So if it's a human on human game, then both players can enter their name, so it's kind of Alex versus Aaron for sake of argument. So both player 1 and player 2 can input their names. The computer, of course, doesn't need to have a name. Okay, so I hope that clarifies that. Yeah, another really good standard question to ask here that we've got is on the appearance and the look of the game. So another question that was asked, it was about the appearance of the game, and is there a certain design kind of aesthetic that you would like the game to have? So on that particular question, I'm going to be quite flexible. Now, it might well be that your client for your real project will have very kind of strict requirements about the appearance of the program that you create and the interface that's designed in terms of the color scheme and the fonts that are used. I'm just going to say that this game is sort of pitched at people probably between the age of 12 all the way up to any age really here. Okay, but there's no set appearance or look or color scheme that I want you to use. It just needs to look professional and well designed is the only requirement I will have there, with that in mind. Do you want to have the score tally? So again, I think this sits more in the extension category here. Obviously in the basic version of the game, I would like a tally of the score. So obviously if it was, if we go back to the best of 5 situation again, 3-2, what was the final score of the game? Yes, you're going to need to tally up the scores as you play each individual game to be able to do that. So yes, I would like that to be tallied, and I'd also like that to be displayed on screen as well during the game itself. Okay, the storage option of that though is going to sit in the extension category. So writing that, and keeping a record of past scores can go into the extension category. What features are essential to the project? Well, I think hopefully I've clarified most of those already in terms of it being a basic version of the tic-tac-toe game, and with the inclusion of all the sort of little add-on features that I've mentioned in this first part of the interview. Okay, so number 17 done. Colours I think I've already talked about as well, and the layout. I do want it to be GUI based and not console based. That's maybe not something that your actual real clients would be able to tell you, but for this one I do want you to sort of have a go at applying those GUI skills that you've been working on recently to this particular game. Are there any additional features you would like the game to have? Well, I've just noticed I'm reaching the end of the 15-minute record limit for free, so I'm just going to pause for literally 1 or 2 minutes. Just set the recorder up again, and I'll be